They said the millionaire's son would never walk again. Doctors had given up, and his father, one of the wealthiest men in the city, had all but accepted his child's fate. But everything changed the day a quiet, overlooked man in a tattered uniform pushed his garbage cart past their mansion. What happened next wasn't medicine, luck, or money. It was something far more powerful, born from pain, resilience, and a world that rarely saw his worth. How could a man society ignored hold the key to a miracle no one believed possible? Marcus was used to being invisible. Every morning before dawn, he pushed his dented trash cart through quiet suburban streets, the smell of garbage clinging to his clothes. To most, he was just the black garbage man, a shadow that came and went without a name. But Marcus carried his own heavy past. Years of being overlooked, judged and dismissed by those who never saw the man beneath the uniform. At the top of the hill stood a mansion unlike anything he'd ever owned or dreamed of. Its pristine gates seemed to guard a world he didn't belong to, yet Marcus passed it every day. Inside lived a billionaire father and his only son, a boy whose life had been confined to a wheelchair since birth. Few outsiders ever saw the child, and whispers of his condition floated through the neighborhood like rumors. Marcus never expected his life to intersect with theirs. After all, he'd learned to keep his head down and do his job quietly. But sometimes fate has a way of placing the most unexpected people at the center of a story, too powerful to ignore. Marcus had always been treated like part of the scenery, someone who blended into the background. But on that cold autumn morning, his usual route felt different. As he wheeled his cart past the mansion's towering gates, he noticed something unusual. A boy, no older than 8, sitting by the window. Pale and fragile, he stared out with hollow eyes, watching Marcus with a curiosity that cut through the glass. Marcus offered a small wave, but the boy didn't respond. The next day, Marcus saw him again, this time outside. Wrapped in a blanket, slouched in a custom wheelchair, the boy sat silently as a nurse stood nearby, scrolling on her phone. Marcus hesitated, unsure if he should approach, but something in the boy's gaze stopped him. It wasn't pity. It wasn't fear. It was longing, the kind of longing Marcus remembered feeling as a child when his own life felt like a prison. That brief moment might have passed unnoticed, but neighbors weren't so kind. As Marcus crouched to tie his shoe, a man jogging by sneered. "Move along," he muttered, loud enough for Marcus to hear. Another woman clutched her purse tighter as she walked past, giving him the kind of look Marcus had grown used to, like he didn't belong there. He kept his head down, but their whispers echoed in his mind. The next morning, he found himself humming an old tune his mother used to sing. Without thinking, Marcus swayed to the rhythm, moving his feet as he wheeled his cart. To his surprise, laughter rang out from behind the gates. The boy's face lit up for the first time, his small hands clapping awkwardly. Marcus froze, unsure if he was intruding, but then he smiled and kept moving, his body flowing with the music. From that day on, Marcus added a few extra steps to his routine. Every morning he'd dance, and every morning the boy would watch. Nurses started filming him, neighbors whispered, but Marcus didn't care. The boy's laughter was worth it, but not everyone saw it that way. One afternoon, as Marcus was finishing his route, a black SUV pulled up beside him. The tinted window rolled down to reveal a sharp-eyed security guard. "You're drawing too much attention," he said coldly. "People are talking. This isn't your place." Marcus tried to explain. He wasn't hurting anyone, just dancing. But the man's glare was enough to silence him. "Keep your distance," the guard warned. "You've been noticed." That night, Marcus couldn't sleep. His kindness had been twisted into suspicion, his presence seen as a threat. The boy's smile haunted him, but so did the thought of losing this connection he'd unintentionally built. The next morning, he made a choice. He wouldn't stop dancing, even if it meant risking everything. He didn't know it yet, but that decision would change his life and the boy's forever. The morning Marcus returned to his route, everything felt wrong. The street was lined with sleek black cars and uniformed guards stood at the mansion's gates. He froze, clutching his garbage cart, as whispers rippled through the neighborhood. Something had happened. Before he could step forward, two men in dark suits approached. "You. Stay right there," one barked. Marcus felt his stomach twist. He wasn't used to being spoken to like this. Well, maybe he was, but not with this much hostility. He raised his hands instinctively. Within seconds, he was surrounded. Neighbors peeked from their windows, some recording on their phones. Marcus's heart pounded as one guard accused him of suspicious behavior, his voice cold and sharp. Marcus tried to explain he'd only danced for the boy, but every word felt like it fell on deaf ears. He was a black man in a wealthy neighborhood, and that was all they saw. Then a small voice cut through the chaos. "Leave him alone." Heads turned as the mansion's front door swung open. The boy, pale and trembling, sat in his wheelchair, his father close behind. For the first time, Marcus saw the billionaire's face. Hard, unreadable, yet softened by something in his son's pleading eyes. "Daddy, he makes me happy. He makes me feel alive." The boy's voice cracked, and tears welled up in his father's eyes. Marcus stood frozen, shame and fear pressing down on him like a weight. For a long moment, no one spoke. Then, the billionaire ordered the guards to step back. The tension in the air was thick enough to choke on. In that moment, everything changed. Marcus wasn't just a garbage man anymore. He was the man who'd brought joy to a boy who had forgotten what it felt like to smile. And that single truth was about to turn the entire situation upside down. In the days that followed, the story spread far beyond that quiet neighborhood. The boy's father, once skeptical and distant, invited Marcus into their home, not as a worker, but as a friend. Slowly, Marcus began visiting the boy after his route, teaching him simple rhythms and steps from his childhood. Doctors were astonished when the boy's muscles, once weak and stiff, began to respond. Each movement was shaky and small, but it was progress, a kind of miracle money couldn't buy. For Marcus, it was bittersweet. He'd spent his life overlooked, treated as invisible, even dangerous. Now he was being celebrated for something as simple as kindness. Yet he knew the truth. If that moment had gone differently, if the billionaire's son hadn't spoken up, Marcus could have been just another headline, another story of a black man, out of place, in the wrong neighborhood. The contrast was haunting. How many others like Marcus never got the chance to prove their humanity? How many voices go unheard because they don't come from privilege, because no one powerful is willing to listen? But Marcus's story became a symbol. Local news stations covered it, praising his spirit. Neighbors who once avoided his gaze now smiled and waved. And though life didn't magically erase the injustice he'd faced, Marcus found purpose in his pain. He began volunteering at community centers, teaching kids to dance, showing them they were more than society's labels. Sometimes the boy's father would watch from the sidelines, his son standing with shaky legs clapping to the rhythm. Marcus would smile, not out of pride, but gratitude for being seen, truly seen for the first time. Because this wasn't just a story about a garbage man and a boy. It was a story about what can happen when empathy shatters prejudice. And maybe that's the question we all need to ask ourselves. How many miracles are we missing because of the way we choose to see each other?